Hi, this is History According to Joel, and on this episode, we're looking at the 5 historical lenses that historians use when analyzing the past. What is a historical lens? A historical lens is the framework in which you can view the past by focusing on specific themes when looking at a historical event or a group of people. In this video, I'm going to define the 5 lenses as political, economic, cultural, environmental, and social. Starting with political. When I'm asking you or a teacher's asking you to analyze a source through a political lens, they're simply saying, take a look at the rules and policies made by governments or leaders that affect the overall story that you're studying. If you're having a hard time deciding whether or not a certain source is mostly political by nature, look for keywords. These keywords could be voting, laws, rights, individual titles related to government like president, congressman, king, emperor, and it can also be anytime one of these leaders takes an action that affects whatever event you are studying. As a 90s kid, I have an obsession with Titanic. Thank you, James Cameron, for that. So I'm going to use that as an example for each one of these lenses, starting with the political approach. If I wanted to analyze the effect of the sinking of the Titanic, from a political perspective, I would look at how the disaster affected maritime law. I could pull up any one of the laws that changed as a result of the sinking and required ships to have more lifeboats than they had previously. I could also go in the reverse. I could take a look at laws that existed before the event and explain how those laws led to the removal of an entire row of lifeboats. I am thinking of the event from a political lens. I am not talking about the economics. It allows me to only look at the event from a certain angle. Next is the economic lens. When you're looking at the way certain events affect trade or how trade affects the event you're studying, then it's an economic factor. When you're reading a source, keywords to look for to decide if it's an economic factor versus political or the other lenses would be finances, trade, wealth, money, really anything that has to do with the creation of a good or providing a service for trade. Going back to the Titanic for an example, if I wanted to look at this through a lens of economics, I could take a look at Bruce Ismay. He was the owner of White Star Line, operating under an umbrella corporation owned by J.P. Morgan. Now, there was pressure on Ismay to make sure that this voyage made headlines. The reason why? Well, his company was losing a lot of money. This could have affected the way he pushed Captain Smith to speed up the ship, to ignore certain safety regulations like the fire that was continuously burning down below deck. In that example, I just focused on how money, how trade, affected the actions of the individuals. After economics, we move on to cultural. You are looking for when your event has been affected by or affected large-scale traditions, beliefs, or the institutions. This could even go down to things such as dietary practices, what types of food people eat, how they eat it, as well as the language in which they speak. What makes us different than social is that we're looking at large-scale practices that are shared by many people, the actions of many rather than individual or one-on-one. Keywords you can look for in a text or when you're researching would be weddings, holidays, certain traditions around eating. As one of His Majesty's ships, the Titanic maintained the similar cultural structure and rules that you would find on mainland England. Who was given the first right to the lifeboat? Well, it was first-class passengers. You're going to see a much higher death toll among those in the lower class because of the value the culture placed on people of wealth. The Titanic is a great example of how that system of class structure continued from the British Isles to the ship. These other 4 lenses focus on how humans interact with one another. Environmental is usually when you're focusing on how humans react or alter the environment around them. You're looking for keywords that have to do with weather occurrences or tectonic forces like volcanoes and earthquakes. Anytime you're looking at a virus or any type of biology, you're of course looking at how the environment is affecting the event you're studying. For example, if you're looking at something like the Titanic, I could look at all of the documents that covered the water temperature, surface, and below, the resulting break-off of the ice sheet, as well as the icebergs that were left in the wake. There is no story of Titanic without the iceberg. So this is, for this particular event, this is probably the most important lens to analyze before going on to the other four. Lastly, we have the social lens. When you're looking at an event through a social lens, you're looking at the individual behaviors of someone and how they interact with others. Whereas culture is about large groups of people, this one is about main characters. When you're looking at a story, there's usually a main character you're focusing on. Well, how do they interact with close relatives? How do they interact with strangers? How do they interact with their boss or employees? If we analyze the effects that the first, second, and third class system had on how many people died for culture, for the social lens, we're going to take a look more at an individual to individual basis. So if we looked at the lifeboats once they'd left the ship, some of the lifeboats had first and third class passengers. If I could get documents that described the debates that took place between those individuals and the officers who were technically in charge once they're on the boat as to whether or not they should go back and save more people in the water, that would be a social lens. I'd be focusing on how individuals behaved in the situation. There you have it. Those are the 5 historical lenses that you can use to analyze the past. They're political, economic, cultural, environmental, and social. This video is just one of 3 related to historical tools that historians use when analyzing the past. If you want more content, again, go to my Teachers Pay Teachers account, or you can hit subscribe to my YouTube channel, History According to Joel.